All right, buckle up, because today we're diving into the story of a king so arrogant he thought he could go toe-to-toe with God himself. Yeah, you heard that right. Forget UFC fights. This is Pride vs. the creator of the universe. And trust me, this story has lessons that will smack harder than any knockout punch. Let's break it down into 4 power-packed points, and I guarantee you won't see the ending coming. You know what's wild about human beings. Give someone a little bit of power, a little bit of wealth, and suddenly they start acting like they've got the keys to the universe. Now imagine multiplying that by 1,000, and you've got this Babylonian king. The guy wasn't just rich. He was living in a palace dripping with gold, surrounded by armies that would jump at his command, and people who bowed every time he walked by. You could almost hear the soundtrack of Arrogance playing behind him everywhere he went. And instead of thinking, wow, I'm blessed, I should be grateful, he looked around and thought, yeah, I did this, me, my hands, my brain, my genius, sound familiar because it's not just ancient kings who think like that. We've all met someone who forgets who gave them their blessings. Maybe it's that coworker who lands a promotion and suddenly acts like they invented hard work. Or the influencer who hits 1 million followers and thinks they're the center of the digital universe. That's the same disease the king had, ego swelling so big it blocks out the sky. But here's the scary part. When ego grows, gratitude shrinks. And once gratitude disappears, humility packs its bags and leaves too. Islam doesn't just warn us about arrogance. It flat out tells us it's poison. The Prophet Muhammad said that even a mustard seed of arrogance in your heart is enough to slam the doors of paradise in your face. Think about that. Not a mountain of arrogance, not a lifetime of bragging. Just a seed, tiny, invisible, tucked away inside you. That's how dangerous it is. And this king, he wasn't dealing with seeds. He had a whole jungle of arrogance growing inside him. His empire became his mirror, and every time he looked at it, he saw himself as godlike. That's why he stood on his balcony, looking over the city, and said, "This is all mine, built by me." Like the creator of the universe had no part in it. It's almost laughable, but that's what arrogance does. It blinds you until the most absurd thoughts feel like truth. Now pause for a second and think about this. How many of us, on a smaller scale, fall into the same trap? We ace an exam and forget the one who gave us the brain to think. We crush it at the gym and forget the one who gave us the body to move. We land a deal, buy a car, build a house, and we act like it was just hustle and grind, when in reality, every breath, every second, every opportunity was handed to us. The king's arrogance isn't ancient history. It's a warning label for our own lives. And the thing about arrogance is that it feels powerful in the moment. It's intoxicating. People clap for you, bow to you, sing your praises, but it's fake power. It's like inflating a balloon. You think it's getting stronger as it gets bigger, but one tiny prick and it's done. That's what the Babylonian king didn't understand. He thought he was building an empire of stone, but he was really building a balloon of pride, and sooner or later that balloon had to pop. But here's where it gets real. God doesn't let arrogance slide forever. Sometimes he humbles you in public. Sometimes he strips away the very thing you bragged about. And sometimes he just exposes how fragile your so-called power really is. The king believed he owned life itself, that his word could decide who lived and who died. Imagine the delusion. Yet we see shadows of that same mentality in our world today. Leaders who think their thrones are eternal. People who act like money makes them invincible. Influencers who think relevance equals immortality. It's all the same disease, just different packaging. And let's be honest, this lesson hurts because it forces us to look in the mirror. We might not have crowns on our heads, but we all wrestle with ego. The moment you think, I did this all by myself, you've already taken a sip of the same poison the king drank. That's why the Quran constantly reminds us, it is Allah who created you and what you do. Simple, clear, no room for ego. So picture this, a mighty king, surrounded by gold and soldiers, with the world at his feet. But in reality, he's smaller than a grain of sand compared to the one who created him. His arrogance made him forget his place, and here's the gut punch takeaway. If arrogance could take down a king of Babylon, what do you think it can do to you and me? Because arrogance is always the start of the downfall. Always, and that's exactly why his story takes a shocking turn next. Now this is where the king's arrogance really goes off the rails. He wasn't satisfied with just flexing his wealth or his empire. No, he wanted to claim the ultimate power. He stood there, chest out, voice booming, and said, "I give life and I take life." Let that sink in for a second. A mortal man who couldn't even control his own heartbeat thought he had the same authority as the one who created life itself. That's not just pride, that's delusion so deep you almost wonder if he believed his own lie. And here's the thing about arrogance. Once it grips you, logic takes a back seat. You start saying wild things, and in your own echo chamber it sounds smart. That king probably thought he was making a brilliant point. In his mind, giving life was sparing someone from execution, and taking life was ordering someone's death. He twisted the definition just enough to fool himself. But arrogance doesn't just lie to others, it lies to you first. It convinces you that your power is bigger than it really is. Then comes the moment of truth. Prophet Ibrahim, as calm, composed, standing firm in front of this so-called mighty ruler. And instead of shouting back, instead of playing the king's game, Ibrahim as does something genius. He says, "My Lord is the one who brings the sun from the east, so you bring it from the west." Silence. No excuses left, no word games to hide behind, just the crushing weight of reality, because when truth shows up, arrogance has nowhere to run. Now, let's pause here, because this moment is bigger than just a debate. Ibrahim didn't just win an argument, he exposed the king's weakness for everyone to see. He reminded the world that no matter how much power a human thinks they have, it crumbles when compared to the simplest act of God. Think about it, the rising of the sun, something so consistent, so obvious that we take it for granted. Yet it's one of the clearest signs of who's in charge. No king, no president, no billionaire, no influencer can flip the direction of sunrise. It's a built-in reminder that there's a limit to human power, and the beauty here is in the delivery. Ibrahim didn't need to argue for hours or throw fancy words around. He dropped one line, one undeniable truth, and that was enough. That's a lesson for all of us. Sometimes the most powerful way to defeat falsehood isn't by screaming louder, but by presenting a truth so clear it leaves no room for debate. You don't need to win every argument. You just need to hold on to the truth. But let's be real, this king's attitude isn't extinct. We still see people today who think they control life and death. Leaders who start wars like it's a game of chess, doctors or scientists who begin to think they've mastered life itself, tech billionaires trying to outsmart death with machines and microchips. And while innovation is a blessing, crossing the line into arrogance, acting like you own what only God owns, that's when destruction begins. History keeps repeating this pattern. What's wild is that arrogance makes people blind to their own limits. The king heard Ibrahim's challenge, and deep down he knew he couldn't answer it. But instead of humbling himself, instead of saying, "You're right, I'm just a man," he doubled down. Pride wouldn't let him admit defeat. That's the dangerous cycle. Once arrogance takes over, admitting you're wrong feels harder than climbing a mountain barefoot. So instead of correcting course, people keep spiraling until they crash. And think about the courage it took for Ibrahim to say what he said. He wasn't just debating some random man. He was standing up to a ruler with the power to execute him on the spot. Yet his faith made him fearless. That's what belief in God does. It makes you bold in front of tyrants and humble in front of truth. Contrast that with the king outwardly powerful but inwardly fragile. The moment someone poked his illusion, it shattered. So here's the takeaway. When you're confronted with arrogance, whether it's from a boss, a friend, or even from within yourself, the weapon you need isn't noise. It's clarity, truth, a reminder that God is in control and that everything else is temporary. That's what silences arrogance faster than anything else. Imagine being in the crowd that day, watching the exchange. On one side, a king with an army, riches, and authority. On the other side, a lone prophet, armed with nothing but faith and one piercing question, and yet who really looked powerful, not the man with the crown, but the man with the truth. Because real power isn't in how many people bow to you, it's in how firmly you bow to God. And that's why this story still resonates. Because arrogance always thinks it can challenge God, but every single time, truth wins. And the king, who thought he could claim life and death, he ended up silenced, exposed, and powerless. That's what happens when ego writes checks reality can't cash. Because when the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, it's a daily reminder that no human being, no matter how loud or powerful, will ever outrun the truth. Here's the thing about power. It looks solid from the outside. Big walls, shiny palaces, armies lined up like machines. It feels invincible. But when that power isn't built on truth and humility, it's like stacking cards in a storm. One gust, and it all comes crashing down. That's exactly what happened with Babylon. From a distance, the empire looked unstoppable. The king walked like nothing could ever touch him, the soldiers marched like they owned the earth, and the people were dazzled by the wealth. But what nobody realized was that underneath all that glitter, the foundation was already cracking. Because power built on arrogance doesn't age well, it rots, slowly, quietly, from the inside out. Babylon's wealth, instead of being a tool for good, turned into greed. Its armies, instead of protecting people, became weapons of tyranny. Its culture, instead of inspiring greatness, became obsessed with worshipping status and ego. And when that happens, collapse isn't a matter of if, it's a matter of when. And here's the kicker. History keeps proving this point. Look back at every so-called superpower that thought it would last forever. Rome, gone. The pharaohs, dust. Even more recent empires, same pattern. They look like they're carved in stone, but arrogance makes even the strongest fortress crumble like sand under waves. Allah says in the Quran, how many gardens and springs they left behind, and crops and noble dwellings, and comforts of life in which they rejoiced. Thus it was, and we caused another people to inherit them. In other words, the things people brag about don't stick around. They get handed to someone else, and this isn't just about empires, it's personal too. Think about how many times we've seen celebrities or billionaires rise so high they look untouchable. Then one scandal, one mistake, one hidden weakness gets exposed, and suddenly they're gone from the spotlight. People forget their names faster than yesterday's news because fame built on ego doesn't last. Money built without gratitude doesn't last, and power built without humility, that's the quickest to fall. Babylon's king thought his walls would protect him. He thought his riches would buy him security. But the truth is, walls don't protect against divine justice, and riches can't bribe your way out of reality. Once the corruption reached its peak, once the arrogance became too heavy, the empire collapsed. It's like a tree that looks healthy on the outside, but is hollow inside. It only takes one storm to knock it down. And what's crazy is that the signs were always there. People probably noticed the greed, the injustice, the arrogance dripping from their leaders' words. But arrogance blinds not just the person who has it. It blinds the people around them too. They start normalizing corruption, laughing at it, even cheering for it, until it becomes too late. That's why arrogance is contagious. It doesn't just destroy the arrogant person, it drags down everyone who follows them. Now let's bring it closer to us. How many of us build our lives like little kingdoms of Babylon? We chase money but forget the one who provides it. We chase status but forget that people's opinions can change overnight. We stack achievements like trophies, thinking they'll make us immortal. But without humility, without gratitude, it's all sandcastles and one wave. Whether it's a test, a loss, or just the passage of time, can wash it all away. That's why the Prophet taught us that true strength isn't in dominating others, it's in controlling yourself. True wealth isn't in your bank account, it's in your contentment. True legacy isn't in what you build with your hands, but in what you leave behind for the next world. Babylon missed all of that. They thought greatness meant bigger palaces, louder armies, flashier power. But what they didn't realize is that greatness without humility is like fire without control. It only burns. And maybe the most powerful reminder is this: every empire that thought it was eternal is now a story in a book, a chapter in a history class, or a pile of ruins tourists take selfies with. That's it. The things that looked unstoppable ended up as dust. And if that can happen to kingdoms with armies, treasures, and monuments taller than the sky, what about us? What about our small little empires of ego? So the lesson is clear. You want to build something that lasts, don't build it on pride. Don't build it on arrogance. Build it on faith, on humility, on values that don't collapse when the storms come. Because walls can fall, money can vanish, people can forget your name. But truth and sincerity, those things outlive you. Babylon thought it was permanent, but history proved it was just another sandcastle waiting for the tide. The Babylonian king thought he was writing history with gold ink. He believed his name would echo across centuries, carved into stone, remembered as the man who ruled the world. But here's the irony. Most people today don't even remember his name. It's a footnote in dusty history books. Meanwhile, the name of Ibrahim as the one man who stood against him is remembered and honored by billions across the globe every single day. That's the difference between a legacy built on ego and a legacy built on truth. And this is where things get real for us. Because let's be honest, we all want to leave something behind. We all want to matter, to be remembered, to make a dent in the world. That desire isn't wrong, it's natural. But the question is, what are you building your legacy on? Are you chasing applause, or are you chasing meaning? Because applause fades, meaning doesn't. Think about it. The king built monuments, but they crumbled. He built walls, but they fell. He built a name based on arrogance, but it dissolved. Ibrahim, as on the other hand, built something you can't see, can't touch. Faith, truth, sacrifice. And that's the legacy that still lives. It's the difference between planting plastic flowers and planting real seeds. Plastic looks good for a while, but it never grows. Real seeds, they outlive you, they multiply. They feed generations after you're gone. Now let's bring it closer. How many people today spend their lives chasing things that look big, but don't last? Chasing likes on social media, chasing job titles, chasing validation. And it works for a moment. You feel important, you feel seen. But give it a few years, maybe even a few months, and people move on. They always do. The same followers cheering for you today will scroll past you tomorrow. The same crowd chanting your name will forget it once the next big trend comes along. That's not legacy, that's noise, and noise never lasts. But here's the beautiful part. You don't need to be a king, a billionaire, or a celebrity to leave a legacy that actually matters. You just need sincerity. You need to live for something beyond yourself, a kind word, an act of charity, a child you raise with good values, a truth you stand for even when it's unpopular. These are the things that echo long after you're gone. These are the things written in a book far more important than history books, the book of deeds, and that's the record that never fades. The king thought his story would be one of power, but in the end, his story became a warning. And Ibrahim's story became a light. That's the choice in front of all of us. Do you want to live in a way that people use your life as an example of what not to do, or in a way that inspires generations to walk the right path? That's the difference between arrogance and humility, between chasing yourself and serving something bigger than you. And let's be real, this isn't easy. The world tempts us with shiny distractions. It tells us legacy means being rich, being famous, being known. But if history has taught us anything, it's that names built on arrogance vanish, and names built on truth remain. That's why when we say, "Peace be upon him," after Ibrahim's name, we're not just honoring him, we're acknowledging that his legacy is alive, that truth doesn't die. So here's the challenge: what legacy are you building right now? When your name is mentioned one day, will it be tied to arrogance, to ego, to meaningless noise, or will it be tied to something that actually lasts? Faith, kindness, justice, sincerity. Because no crown, no throne, no empire can outlive time, but even a single sincere action, done for the sake of God, can echo through eternity. That's why we need to stop obsessing over being remembered by people and start focusing on being remembered by God. People's memory is short. God's record is eternal, and at the end of the day, that's the only legacy that counts. The Babylonian king thought his name would be carved in stone forever, but today his story is just rubble. Meanwhile, Ibrahim's name is carved into hearts, whispered in prayers, and honored in every corner of the world. That's the difference, that's the choice. Because at the end of the day, legacy isn't about how long your name lives on people's lips. It's about whether your deeds live on in the sight of the one who never forgets.